This video will show the installation of Novell Open Enterprise Server on VMware Workstation. To begin, we go to File, create a new virtual machine. We want to use Custom. Keep the default of VMware Workstation 8 for compatibility, and choose I will install the operating system later. We want to choose Novell NetWare. Under the version, it will be essentially equivalent to NetWare 6. Naming the machine is going to be very important. Make sure that you put on your portable drive. My portable drive is my D drive. Under D, virtual machines, and I will choose under Novell. Currently under Novell, I have a Windows client directory, and I want to install another one for the Novell Open Enterprise Server. I'll right click on Novell, go to New, Folder, and I'm just going to call it OES for Open Enterprise Server. Click OK for the directory. I'm going to name the virtual machine the same thing as OES. Number of processors, I'll keep it 1. The amount of memory, I'm going to increase to 2 gig. I can do that by clicking on 2 gig over here, or by typing in 2048 megabytes. Network connection, I'm going to keep as a network address translation. Click Next. And keep the default for the I/O controller, and also keep the default for creating a new virtual disk. It recommends SCSI. I'll keep the default. The disk size I'm going to increase to 20 gigabytes, and I'm going to store it all as a single file. Leave the default for the virtual disk file name, and now I'm finished. When I am finished, I want to change the CD-ROM drive. I actually want to insert the ISO image for the first of the 2 CDs that will be needed to install Open Enterprise Server. I can double click on there on the CD/DVD option and click on Use the ISO image file. I browse for the ISO image file. It's on my D drive. Under ISO images is where I've kept mine. The first one is the NW65 OS SP8. This is the operating system disk for Service Pack 8. Later on, we'll be switching to the product disk, but we start with the operating system disk. Once it's installed, I click OK. I can then power on the virtual machine. Let it do the initial boot process. The first several screens will be in a text-based menuing system. About halfway through the installation, it's going to switch to a full graphical user interface. I want to click inside this area so that I can actually use the arrow keys. Select this line to install English. I hit Enter. I can hit Continue, just enter for accepting all the defaults for the regional settings. Here's a license agreement, and once you're done reading it, you can hit F10 to accept the license agreement. And there's a second license agreement for the JInfonet software, also hitting F10 once again to accept that license agreement. Do you want to do it in the default install or manual install? We do want to change that from default to manual. To do that, we can just hit the space bar, and that will change it back and forth between default and manual. Once it's on manual, you arrow down. Once it's on manual, you arrow down to continue, and you hit Enter. On the Prepare a Boot partition, we want to arrow down to modify what do we want to modify? We want to modify the 20 gig disk drive that we have installed, and I hit enter. This is the boot partition size. It doesn't need to be very big. 500 megabytes is the default, and that's going to be fine for what we're going to be doing. So hitting enter on 500 megs. When we're done with that, we can arrow down again, down to the bottom section under options, and then arrow back up to continue. It can be a little difficult navigating, just remembering arrowing up and down usually gets you to where you need to be. Hit enter and continue. We will use all the defaults for the server settings, so hit continue again. And this is the first of 3 file copies. After that file copy, we'll come to some more options. Device drivers is acceptable, so we just hit enter and continue. And some more device drivers, those are acceptable as well, hitting continue. And for the hard drive controllers, that's also fine, so hit continue again. It's going to ask for a NIC adapter. The very first option, the Novell Ethernet PCNet PCI adapter, is fine, so hitting enter and hitting continue again to accept the defaults in the next screen. Creating a sys volume. This is where the operating system is actually being installed. It defaults to 8 gigabytes. You can see that for the sys volume size right above here. And that's the default. We'll accept the default, so we'll just hit enter on create. We're going to continue the installation from now on. At this point, you actually could add additional volumes and pools. We'll be talking about that in another section though. So we're just going to continue the installation at this point. And we'll come to our second file copy. The rest of the installation is going to be in the graphical user interface. We do want to choose Customize Network Server and click Next. And we'll make our selection of the components to install. We're not going to go through all these individually. We're just going to choose them and sort of talk about them later on. The ones we do want to install, very first one is Apache 2 web server. That actually allows some of the administration to happen on the server. We're going to include iPrint, Novell iFolder storage services. Scrolling on down, we also want to include Tomcat 5, Novell Net Storage, and scrolling all the way down to the bottom is the Novell iManager. We can click Next on there then. It says, do you want to install the iManager plugins now? And yes, we do. This is going to be another file copy. We click on Copy Files. But it's also the time that's going to be swapping CDs between the operating system CD and the product CD. To do that, I need to hit Control-Alt to get my mouse out of the actual virtual machine and onto the onto VMware Workstation. I'm just going to maximize this so I can see a little bit better. I want to go down here to the bottom where the CD-ROM drive is. There's a couple ways of changing CDs. This seems to be the most effective way. It's a few more steps. To do that, I right-click on the CD-ROM icon. I click on Disconnect. So I'm actually disconnecting the CD-ROM drive. I then right-click on it again and then click on Settings. When I click on Settings, I'm able to change the ISO image. Use the ISO image as follows. I want to browse for there, and instead of using the operating system, I'm going to choose the NW65 Product Service Pack 8. Click again, Open, and then OK. I still need to connect the drive again then, so I right-click and I say Connect. Now this process can take a little while. Please be patient. once it does read the disk, it's just going to start picking up. If you start clicking on OK or continue, it's actually going to get you some more problems, and you can work around it, but it's a little bit more difficult to work with. This is another file copy. It takes a little while. On the next screen, it asks for the server name. We're going to be naming our server using our last name, so I'll use Benfield _serve. So in your last name _serve. Click Next. It's going to ask for some IP addressing now. We are going to give it a static IP address. We do want to click on IP. And it's going to fill in a lot of information already because of the way we configured it. The address of the server is going to be 192.168.230 dot, and we're going to name all of our servers 10. So 192.168.230.10. The subnet mask is fine, and it automatically picked up the default gateway, and that's all configured in the VMware Workstation. Clicking Next. It's going to ask for the host name. We're going to use the same host name as we created our server name, which in my case is Benfield _serve. The domain defaults to local domain. We actually want to be part of the school's domain, kind of. So we're going to end up changing our domain to go to ltc.edu. Our name server defaults to the default gateway. We can keep it that, and we can click Next. Our time zone, we scroll on down to Greenwich Mean Time -6 for US and Canada Central Time, and we do allow the system to adjust for daylight savings time. Clicking Next. This is the question about eDirectory. eDirectory is a database that keeps and manages all the resources in our network. The two options are to create a new eDirectory tree or to install the server into an existing eDirectory. For this example, we actually do want to create a new tree. Everybody's going to have their own tree, and we click Next. We need to name our tree. Using your last name, Benfield _tree is how we're going to name it. So again, your last name _tree. The context is going to be simply your last name. We're going to talk more about this later on in other sections, but this is really your organization's name. If it was LTC, the context of the server object would be LTC. If it was Acuity, it'd be Acuity. We're going to name our last name now, though. Our admin context, as soon as we click down there, automatically fills in. Don't worry about the O equals being added both to the context for the server and the admin context. That is actually what it is the organization equals and then that name. The password is going to be for your admin account. That's going to be created automatically during the installation process. Just to make it really, really simple, and so we don't forget what it is, it's LTC. LTC is what I'm going to be using. You need to confirm your password. You can name it anything that you want, but realize that if you forget what it is, you're not going to be able to recover it. Click Next. It's going to confirm your information, make sure that everything's spelled correctly. Benfield _tree, O equals Benfield for your server context, and your administrator name is going to be CN equals admin dot O equals Benfield. All that naming convention will be covered in another section. If that's all ready, we click Next. It's going to ask for a license. We can browse for the license. This is the Browse button. And it's going to be located on our product CD. We can open up a product CD by toggling this icon on the side. And there's a license folder. We can click on there. Once we click on the license folder, on the right-hand side is the actual license that we can use. We click on the license. It tells us that it's unlimited server license. No user license is required. If that's all set, we click OK. When we're done with that step, we click Next. Where do we want to put that? Everything's going to be put under the organization equals Benfield, so we just click next. It's going to come up with a couple of ports. We'll leave all the defaults, so we're just going to click next. For our login methods, we're not going to cover this in detail now at all. We're just going to select all of our login methods. That gives us the most flexibility of how we can log on to the server later on. And click next. It's going to ask for some host names or IP addresses. Now, if in fact we're in a real environment, we'd be using domain name services. These would be exactly correct. Since we're not using DNS, we actually need to include the IP addresses for these different services. The IP address is simply the IP address of the server that we're working with, which in this case is 192.168.230.10. It's probably best just to copy this at this point, so highlight it all and doing Control-C to copy, because we're going to be using that same IP address several different places. One is for the LDAP host name, the next one is for the iFolder server host name. We're going to highlight over that and hit Control-V to paste the IP address in there. We click next, and we have a couple more places that we have to change the IP address. It asks for the net storage installation, asking again for the domain name services name of that server or the IP address. We do want to change the IP address. It's only a portion of this though. It's only the portion prior to the colon. We definitely want to keep the colon and then O equals Benfield. So we're replacing benfield_serve.go2ltc.edu with the IP address. And I did that by hitting Control-V again. That's the only place that we have to be really careful of doing it that way. Down the bottom, it's asking for the IP address of the iFolder server. And again, we want to change it from its name and doing Control-V to paste its IP address. When we're done at this screen, we click Next. And it's going to do its final copy. After the final file copy, you'll be prompted to remove your CDs and then to restart the system. To remove the CDs, right-click on the icon in the lower right-hand corner for the CD-ROM and click on Settings. The first thing you want to do is under the connection, you want to switch it from the ISO image back to using the physical drive. Also then above that, you want to remove the check boxes for connected and connect at server at startup. When you're all finished, go ahead and click OK and then click Yes to restart the system. The machine will reboot and come back up. Wait until you come all the way back to the Novell screen where you have the Novell for the start button in the lower left-hand corner. The next step is to install VMware tools on the server. You want to close the GUI from the main screen by clicking Close GUI. Are you sure? You want to click Yes. You want to go up to VMware Tools then and click on Install VMware Tools. You may or may not get the next pop-up of whether you want to install or not. Click Install. When you do, give it a couple seconds and a new virtual volume will pop up. The command to install VMware Tools is you want to type in the command prompt vmw_tools:setup and then hit enter. It should just take about a second or two and it'll pop up and saying that it's okay. When you're all finished with your server, just type down and enter at the command prompt and your server will shut down and power off. Wait until you come back to the VMware screen to make sure that everything gets closed properly. And that should be it.